The Black Hollow Tragedy. It was September 18th, 1982, when a team of 6 cavers prepared to explore Black Hollow Cavern, infamous for its labyrinth of submerged tunnels, had seen few visitors due to its unforgiving conditions. The team, led by veteran caver Mark Harris, aimed to map the deeper chambers rumored to contain stunning crystal formations. The day started smoothly. Equipped with ropes, wetsuits, and oxygen tanks, the group descended into the narrow, waterlogged passages. Progress was slow, but steady as they pushed deeper into the cavern, their headlamps cutting through the darkness. After 5 hours, they reached the Siphon, a notorious passage submerged under 3 feet of water. They pressed on, unaware of the storm brewing above. On the surface, dark clouds rolled in unexpectedly, and heavy rain began to fall. A nearby river swelled rapidly, and water poured into the cave's entrance. The surface team noticed the flooding and tried to warn the group via radio, but the signal failed deep inside the cave. Inside, the cavers first noticed a slight rise in water, but dismissed it as normal seepage. When the water began surging, panic set in. They tried to retreat, but quickly realized the only route back was already submerged. Mark led the group to a small air pocket in an upper chamber, where they hoped to wait out the flood. Rescue efforts mobilized as water poured into Black Hollow. Volunteers worked through the night, attempting to pump water out and establish contact. Divers were sent in, but the conditions were treacherous. The labyrinth of passages and powerful currents made it impossible to reach the trapped team. After 2 days of tireless rescue attempts, the divers finally reached the chamber. It was too late. All 6 cavers had succumbed to rising water and hypothermia. The Black Hollow Tragedy remains a somber reminder of nature's power and the risks of exploring the unknown. The descent into Devil's Hollow. It's August 14th, 1991, and 3 friends, Tom, Alex, and Nate, are standing at the edge of Devil's Hollow, a flooded sinkhole in Alabama known for its hidden underwater cave system. Locals whisper of its dangers, especially the final chamber, nicknamed the Pit, where several divers have perished. None of the friends are experienced cave divers, but curiosity and youthful bravado outweigh caution. The cave system features 4 chambers, with the final one requiring a narrow squeeze to enter. The Pit is infamous for its silt-covered floor and a deceptive chimney-like tunnel that leads to a dead end. 2 divers had drowned here a decade earlier, their bodies recovered by seasoned cave diver and local legend Mike Harrington. He often warned others to avoid the cave, but couldn't keep thrill-seekers away. The friends descend into the first chamber, marveling at the beauty of the clear blue water. By the second chamber, the water grows murky, and their nerves start to fray. Alex suggests turning back, but Tom insists they continue. They reach the 3rd chamber and encounter the narrow squeeze leading to the pit. Against better judgment, Tom removes his tank and squeezes through, with Nate following. Alex stays behind, increasingly uneasy. Inside the final chamber, Tom and Nate are awed by the cavern's size, but immediately notice the silt rising, clouding their vision. Tom spots the false chimney and mistakes it for the exit. As he swims toward it, his tank grazes a wall, kicking up more silt and disorienting him. Nate realizes Tom is heading into a dead end and tries to signal him, but their lights are dimming, and Tom's regulator is running dry. Panicked, Nate retreats to the 3rd chamber, where Alex is waiting. The 2 attempt to guide Tom back, but by the time they reach him, he's unconscious. Nate and Alex drag Tom's body through the narrow squeeze, but their own air is nearly depleted. Alex surfaces, gasping for air, but Nate doesn't make it back. Emergency services and local divers recover the bodies of Tom and Nate the following day. Mike Harrington, who leads the recovery, shakes his head in grief. Devil's Hollow takes another 2, he mutters, vowing to seal the cave permanently, but knowing it'll only draw more thrill-seekers. The descent into Blue Widow's grotto. It's July 14th, 1986, and 2 friends, Mike and Eric, both marine biology students from the University of Florida, are preparing to dive into Blue Widow's grotto, a notorious underwater cave, a popular swimming spot for locals. But beneath it lies a vast labyrinth of underwater chambers. Despite warnings about the cave's dangers, the pair are determined to explore its depths. The grotto has 4 main chambers. First 2 chambers are expansive, with clear visibility, but the 3rd chamber narrows to a 15-inch wide tunnel. The 4th chamber, called the Widow's Lair, is a small, air-filled pocket with enough room for someone to stand up. Mike and Eric, inexperienced in cave diving, descend into the 1st chamber. Excited, they continue into the 2nd without hesitation. They continue on to the entrance to the 3rd chamber. They find the 15-inch narrow squeeze and decide to press on. Mike removes his tank to wiggle through the tight tunnel, holding his breath as he drags the tank behind him. Eric follows closely. They finally arrive inside the 4th chamber. They stand up and take off their masks. They are awestruck by its eerie beauty, but quickly notice silt clouding the water. They notice it's very hard to breathe the air. That is because the air down here has a higher percentage of carbon dioxide. Realizing that it's time to go back, they head back through the narrow squeeze. On their way back, a small rock slide partially blocks the tunnel back to the 3rd chamber. Mike, leading the way, wedges himself through the tight space. Eric, struggling behind, notices Mike's regulator slipping from his mouth. He shares his own air, passing the regulator back and forth in a desperate attempt to keep them both alive. They finally clear the rock slide and squeeze back into the third chamber, but their tanks are nearly empty. Disoriented, they begin to swim to what they thought was the exit, but turns out it was a false chimney, a dead end. Realizing they are low on air, they begin to panic. With visibility low, they swim from one chamber to the next. They finally come to what they think is the exit and stand up. They are mortified to realize they are back at the fourth chamber, with their air in the tanks completely gone and the oxygen running low inside the fourth chamber. They take one final breath to begin another attempt at the 300-foot swim it will take them to get out. After several days of the 2 men missing, the authorities were called. Captain Harrell came to assist in the recovery and was heartbroken to find more lives claimed by the grotto. Jacob's tomb. It was November 5th, 1992, and a group of friends decided to go cave exploring at a very popular site, Jacob's tomb. The 5 friends dive headfirst into the entrance, which leads to a very large chamber. They continue to walking deeper and deeper into the cave. After an hour, they come to a point where they need to start crawling. The opening is getting more and more narrow. Scott, who has done this cave before, tells everyone to get into a single file line behind him, each one of them crawling on their bellies, barely able to move. Shortly later, they get to a massive chamber opening. All the friends sit and take a break in the opening. This is as far as Scott has ever been. Wanting to go further, he sees another narrow chamber that leads downwards. Christy and Jason decide they don't want to go and stay back. The other 3 friends begin to grow through this narrow opening. The difference between this narrow chamber and the others is this one has a tiny bit of flowing water, so as they belly crawl through their clothes and gear is getting soaked. This chamber was also at a 30-degree angle pointing downwards. Suddenly, Scott, who is in the front, gets stuck. He calls out for help from the other 2 behind him. Eddie, who is right behind him, grabs his foot and tries to pull him back, but due to how narrow the pathway is, he cannot get enough leverage to move him. Eddie and Mark, who are behind him, try to go back to get help. They realize they cannot turn around and can't back out. The water had made the rocks easier for them to slide down, but going back was a problem. They called for help. Christy and Jason, who stayed behind, heard them and decided to go back out the way they came in to get help. 6 hours later, the rescue team showed up, but by then it was too late. All 3 friends had died by hypothermia due to the fact that they were wet, and inside the cave, it was below 40 degrees.